My name is Marianna Trevin-Wright. I'm Executive Director of the National Butterfly Center here in Mission, Texas. We're standing on the levee road that bisects our property. Our property is one of several in this section of the Lower Rio Grande Valley Wildlife Conservation Corridor. This section is actually named for our parent organization, the North American Butterfly Association. All of this area right here is a remnant of native habitat set aside specifically for species conservation, both plant and animal species. Interesting to see them completely ignoring the no trespassing government property sign. So the levee here is built in the floodplain to prevent the Rio Grande River from flooding the entire alluvial delta. We're not really a valley in the geographical definition of the word. We are an alluvial delta on the banks of the Rio Grande River, which routinely overflows and floods. So we have dams upriver and downriver along the Rio Grande to sort of help maintain levels and mitigate instances of flooding. This levee we're standing on now was actually built, fortified, and made higher in 2008, 9, 10. It was finished during Hurricane Alex, during which the floodwaters actually rose to the crest of this levee. And our property, everything back here was underwater for 4 months. In the areas where they had the existing bollard wall fencing downriver from us, all terrestrial life drowned. Everything that could not get beyond those steel bollards, that fence that trapped them between the river and the border wall, because they're not building this new international boundary, this barrier that's supposed to stop the movement of people and drugs and weapons and all of that on the actual border. From here to the Rio Grande River, our actual international border is 1.2 miles. And as the river winds and as the levee road winds up at Benson State Park right here by us, the wall will actually be built over 2 miles inland. So that's an awful lot of land that we are ceding to Mexico behind this new physical and actual boundary for the United States. They're going to be putting this, what they call levee wall, but it's border wall. It's a project of the Border Wall Program Management Office of Customs and Border Protection under the Department of Homeland Security. It is not a project of the International Boundary and Water Commission. It is also not actually levee, because if it were levee, they could build it in the prescribed easement that already exists for levee, for flood control. This has been ruled by the courts to be immigration barrier, tactical infrastructure, border wall. But in the March 2018 Consolidated Appropriations Act, they still use these word games to call it something other than what it is. So down at the toe of the existing levee, they're going to install a concrete vertical slab, a wall, to the approximate height of the levee crest, which is about 18 feet. And then on top of that, they're gonna put 18-foot tall steel bollards. So we're getting a 36-foot tall wall. It's much taller than existing border wall in the lower Rio Grande Valley, and that is something that this administration has done deliberately. You may have heard about all of the Trump border wall prototypes that had to be over 30 feet tall. Anybody know why that is? It's because falling from 30 feet or above, human beings reach terminal velocity. So when we call this a wall of death, we're not just talking about the wildlife species that will be condemned to death in the event of a flood. We're also talking about any humans that fall while attempting to traverse this barrier, because at or above 30 feet, you are most likely to sustain a life-threatening or life-ending injury. So once they've put up this big concrete wall and steel bollard fence, they're going to backfill this triangle, this wedge that will exist, and turn what is now a road wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass into a road that's wide enough for 4 to 6 vehicles to pass. Then where you see all of the trees now, they're going to eliminate all of that habitat now during spring nesting season, and they're going to put a rubberized all-weather road in behind the entire length of the border wall, and they're going to install blitzkrieg lights for, to light up this area all night long. That's not good for wildlife in that they need their regular diurnal rhythms for crepuscular and nocturnal wildlife, as well as for plants, to do their business, to live healthfully. And that all-night bright lighting is going to disrupt everything that's exposed. Of course, the elimination of habitat is a big deal for butterflies, for birds, for all wildlife, in that plants provide breeding, feeding, shelter, all of the things necessary for wildlife to reproduce, to live, to thrive. And then this barrier will also fragment habitat that is already fragmented by things that we know jeopardize wildlife, like roads. We have roadkill and all of that as a result. But now they won't even be able to range beyond the border wall for mates, for other resources, and wildlife that is able to reproduce and do well behind the border wall will face increased competition for all of those resources, as well as a much smaller gene pool for breeding, and that's really detrimental to species health.
So you talk about the wildlife on this side of the wall and the wildlife on the other side of the wall. Will there be an avenue for the wildlife to go back and forth between each side of the wall, or will they be effectively trapped and forced to interbreed with whatever is on one side or the other?
At this time, according to Customs and Border Protection, there is no plan for any area of passage for wildlife. Wildlife will effectively be trapped here or there with no ability to move through.
Wow. And in terms of the wall and in terms of the surveyors coming through and doing some sort of assessment, how long have they taken to do an assessment regarding the effects of this on wildlife and plants?
Border Patrol.
Oh, on a motorcycle. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, here comes another one.
Do you have a good relationship with the Border Patrol out here?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Looks like he's having fun.
I have some friends who work for Border Patrol, and they say it's a blast, that it's the easiest $100,000 you'll ever earn in your lifetime.
Wow. Yeah, when I was talking to Father Roy, some of his congregation has become Border Patrol. He calls them his boys, but I guess that's only a small percentage. But yeah, we were talking about an assessment done on any of the land regarding the impact of the wall on flora, fauna, all of these things, because I know assessments take quite a while to actually understand and truly understand how something affects something else.
For border wall construction, the federal government has waived all of the laws requiring any of those assessments. So there are no environmental impact studies required for this project under the Real ID Act of 2005, passed during the Bush administration. Authority is granted to a cabinet member, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, to unilaterally waive all federal laws that are determined to impede any project related or any action related to national security. So in Hidalgo County, for the construction of 25 new miles of border wall, they have waived 28 federal laws.
My goodness. How does that make you feel, waiving 28 federal laws? I know you're very passionate about this land and about what you do and your position. I mean, how does that make you feel?
It's infuriating. These are laws duly passed by Congress for our protection, like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, for the protection of species, like the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And then also laws that provide freedoms for oppressed peoples. So most of us enjoy freedom of religion under the Constitution, but our indigenous peoples had to have a law passed granting them those same rights and protections, the Native American Religious Freedom Act. That law has been waived for this project, as has the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. So what we learn from this exercise is that everywhere they're choosing to build border wall, the government has decided those peoples, their health, their quality of life, their rights do not matter. Now I'm going to move out of the way for Border Patrol that's obviously been cruising our property.
So do they have authorization to just go around the property without requesting permission?
That's another doozy. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, Border Patrol is granted authority for warrantless entry to all private property within 25 miles of any U.S. border for the purpose of patrol. Of course, on our land, they drag tires, they have installed video cameras, they've installed motion sensors, they have installed the dirt box audio surveillance technology, many things that we feel are outside of the scope of the word patrol. But we already know we live in sort of an extra constitutional zone where the Fourth Amendment protections that the rest of America enjoys do not apply to us. Border Patrol can stop us, they can search our vehicle, they can search our electronic devices, cell phones and laptop computers and iPads, all without warrant. Now, they're not supposed to stop you without cause, but they do.
Yeah. Have you seen these kind of things escalate under the Trump administration? I know many people say Obama started the building of the wall and that Trump has escalated it, but I mean, have you seen a difference as the new administration has approached this issue?
Absolutely. We used to have a good relationship with Border Patrol out here. Cooperative, supportive, respectful, and that all changed early in 2017. The agents became aggressive, destructive, hostile, and on private property with regard to our employees and our visitors. They began to deny us access to our property, just, because they felt like it. And it's been a radical change. It's been unfortunate because they drive through the gardens over the sprinkler heads and our seedlings. They surround my employees. The summer of 2017, I had 3 staff members. One of them had brought their 2 children to work with them during the summertime, which we've all done. This is a great big wilderness playground for children, and our children are lucky to enjoy it whenever they can come out. And the Border Patrol agents attempted to separate his children from him, demanding ID from the children, who were at the time, I think, age 10 and 12. And of course, what identification does a 10-year-old carry with them? You know, especially when they live about a mile away and have just come to work with Dad.
Yeah, and these are U.S. citizens. I mean, they're not, you know, we hear about all kinds of different things going on, but these aren't, I mean...
Well, we also have an administration now that is specifically targeting Hispanic peoples on the borderlands for denaturalization. They are denying passports. They are seizing passports and denying re-entry, particularly to people born in the Rio Grande Valley. And that's been documented in media sources and other places. And Stephen Miller has, helped craft this policy for Trump. The administration has admitted to their denaturalization task force, and as well as to their intent to inflict major trauma on peoples of color, particularly Hispanics, with the zero tolerance family separation policy. They are also, we know, placing agents, Customs and Border Protection agents, at the center line of all of our bridges to physically bar asylum seekers from legally entering the United States and requesting asylum. That kind of leads us to the idea of a border wall built 2 miles inland on U.S. soil. So for everyone who thinks that's going to stop Mexicans, or as Border Patrol calls them, OTMs, the other than Mexicans, from coming to the U.S., what we're creating here is a landing and staging zone up to 2 miles wide for all traffic, whether that's human beings or drugs or weapons. And the people who come, the asylum seekers, they will simply come and sit back here along the wall and wait for a Border Patrol agent on patrol to see them and call it in. And they'll be picked up and processed according to the laws, unless we have new laws or policies that send them straight to prison. The bad hombres will all have the gate code to the border wall gate, because the American taxpayers are not purchasing all of the private property south of the wall. They are only going to seize from us about a 5-acre strip here for the wall and the enforcement zone, 5 acres on our 1/4 mile width where the border wall will go. And the rest of the private property will remain ours. By law, they cannot then deny us access to our property. So they will be a gate, whether it's on our property or a neighbor's property, through which we must have access to our land. And that's not just us, that's the RV resort down the road, it's the Catholic Church, it's the country club and golf course. Everywhere, everybody will be given the gate code. Not just members and visitors to the National Butterfly Center, but everyone who drives a garbage truck where they have to provide municipal services, every firefighter and ambulance company, every Time Warner cable repair guy, everybody gets the gate code.
So I know you've been in the news recently a lot, and you were talking about court and legal battles earlier. I've talked previously with people about La Lomita and private land. Could you talk a little bit about what's happening in court with you, with the Butterfly Center, and your strategies in trying to deal with this whole wall business that's happening right now?
Well, we actually found the government contractors on our property cutting down trees, mowing down brush, and widening a road on private property on July 20th, 2017. That was 9 months before any congressional vote or any funding appropriation for more border wall. But when confronted, the government contractors said they were sent to do that work on our land ahead of the border wall, in preparation for the border wall. So we immediately took legal action. We filed our notice of intent to sue the federal government and waited the 60 or 90 days required for that. The government did not respond. So on December 11th, we filed suit against the federal government for all of the egregious acts that have taken place here. And of course, then in March, funding was appropriated. In June, 28 laws were waived. I believe it was September when the contract was awarded to the company, the private contractor that's building the wall. So all of this has progressed, yet in 14 months, we've never had a day in court. So we did file on Monday a motion for temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction as we seek to secure our rights and our property, to get our day in court, especially as the desiccation of habitat, the removal of all vegetation ahead of the excavation and pouring of concrete has already begun on the federal lands adjacent to us. The heavy equipment has moved in. We have new signage saying restricted area. You know, this is property of the U.S. government, when actually it is not yet property of the U.S. government. And every day, it seems, we have increased militarization of this area. And law enforcement officers arbitrarily stopping, questioning, detaining people who have every right to be here, whether those are just citizens out riding their bicycles or visitors to the National Butterfly Center who are here to enjoy the project that they have funded.
It's just amazing to me, walking from Brownsville to here. I've seen the wall almost every step of the way. I mean, there's been obviously portions without, but I started at the Gulf at the Rio Grande, and you know, it's not until Mission that I've really got to actually see the river, to experience the river. To me, I have personal feelings about that, but how does all this make you feel? You've got, like you said, there's signs saying that this is now government property. You're dealing with the court issues. You've got a wall proposed. It's such a big change that's happening to so many people. You talked about the Catholic Church with La Lomita. There's private landowners going to court. How does this make you feel? It's
infuriating. The Rio Grande River is beautiful, and it used to be a vibrant recreational area. I learned to water ski there. We used to have clubs and bars and parks that were going night and day along the river. On the Mexico side, they still have all of that. They have parks and soccer complexes and places where you can put in your boat or your jet ski. They have nightclubs and event venues because it is so scenic and lovely. You know, people used to fish there. And because of this false narrative of this invasion, of the danger, people have pulled out. Businesses have shut down. Outdoor outfitters and beach bars, for lack of a better word, with volleyball courts and soccer fields and, swim in and out, from the river to the pool to the bar. I mean, just great stuff has dried up here as people move out. And nothing could be worse for our public safety. The presence of legitimate enterprise, of vested community members and stakeholders on the river is the greatest deterrent to crime. And the government is doing the opposite of that, and they know that community policing is evidence-based and effective. But they're doing the opposite of that. The other thing is, the Rio Grande River is literally our lifeblood. I mean, it's a historical and cultural area of significance. It used to be a recreational area, but it is still our only source of fresh water for over 2 million people here. 2 million people in Cameron and Hidalgo County. And the government is putting up this border wall between us and the river. Both counties are going to be completely walled off. And all of the pumps that bring water to us from the Rio Grande River will be behind the border wall, guarded by this paramilitary police force that works for the federal government. So should the government decide to turn the pumps off, we dry up and die. There's a Texas billionaire, T. Boone Pickens, from West Texas, who said many years ago that water is the new oil. And we see what's happening in places like Cape Town, South Africa, and Venezuela, and other communities where the water is gone, or it has been taken over by an authoritarian regime and a military police force, and people die. And then we've got, of course, the waiver of the Solid Waste Disposal Act and the Clean Water Act, which means as they do this work, they can poison the canal or the river. And when the border wall gets built from West Texas to the Laguna Madre, we have every reason to believe that they'll just put pipeline in back here, which will truly poison the Rio Grande River.
So I think that all of those are such interesting points. It seems like there are so many people who can't experience this firsthand. I've had several weeks of being here, walking, meeting people, and I feel completely safe. So many people are listening to pundits and different channels, CNN, Fox, even PBS NewsHour, so many different places with so many different opinions and perspectives. Could you give us basically your perspective? I keep asking people, what does it mean on the border? How does it make you feel? What could you say to all of these people who are sitting there watching heads on television and listening to their opinions? And yeah, I mean, that's such an important thing.
The first thing everyone should keep in mind listening to these talking heads is chances are they've never even been here. They've not come to the Rio Grande Valley or experienced it. So if I were to declare myself an authority on the moon, people would laugh me out of town. I've never been to the moon. I'm not a geologist. I'm not a space scientist. I'm not I have no authority to speak on that. It's the same thing with Hannity and all these other yahoos. Anderson Cooper. I mean, maybe they've come here once. Maybe they ran around with Border Patrol. I know Fox sent somebody to jump out of the brush and ambush people. But they don't live here. I mean, my husband and I have 6 children. We both live and work in the Rio Grande Valley. I report to work every day on the banks of the Rio Grande River. I have an Ivy League education. I could go work anywhere in the world I chose to be. If this area were not safe, why would I stay here? Why would we raise our children here? Why would I work here? Don't listen to the folks who have an agenda. The agenda is, if it bleeds, it leads. So they sensationalize everything. We've experienced that firsthand in people who come to interview us, and the first question is, how many illegals have you caught here? And the answer is, first of all, not our job, and second of all, how many do you see? It just doesn't happen the way they're saying that it does on TV. The majority of people and drugs, by the government's own data and admission, are coming through legal ports of entry. They're coming across bridges. And what are we doing in South Texas? At the same time they're building a border wall, they're building another bridge.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Is your camera overheating? Or are you running out of...
For some reason, it only does on this camera. Oh, crap. No.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it only does 30 minutes at a time.
Okay.
So, lots of texts.
Summit, let's go down to the river real fast. Let's go
for
down
a couple
there.
minutes. That's awesome.